Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for August the 28th, Tuesday the 28th, 2018. I am back in Wilmington, North Carolina, after my trip out to Oahu for Hurricane Lane. The impacts out there, obviously there was some flooding, and in some case record flooding, but it wasn't nearly as bad overall as it could have been, which is obviously great news considering all of the possible outcomes that could have taken place. I met some wonderful people, very friendly, a beautiful part of the world. I see why people like to go there. But I'm going to tell you what, that trip out from North Carolina to Hawaii and back in a 5-day time frame, luckily I had some time in between to rest a little bit, but man, that is a trek for sure. So it's good to be back, and now it's time to talk about the Atlantic more and more, and the Pacific. It's not over yet. So look, this is where we started, and I just want to remind you of this. This is how things got started back in June. There's June the 4th, and these were the anomalies, departures from the long-term average at the beginning of the hurricane season, when much was made about this right here. All right, so let me get rid of that because I want to do it again and just highlight this. All right, now watch what happens over the next couple of frames here that I'm going to show you. This was June the 4th. Now this was July the 2nd, and this is when Colorado State University's Phil Klotzbach, Dr. Klotzbach, and his team downgraded, if you will, the Atlantic forecast to being slightly below the long-term average for the seasonal forecast for the Atlantic Basin. And you can see the comparison. It warmed up a little bit in the Atlantic. Now, let's take a look at the most recent, which was yesterday. And you can see that very clearly, yeah. So, does that mean that it's not going to be below average? Well, I can't say because I don't know. But I can say that that is a dramatic change. And when we look at a different perspective, and let's just take a look at what we do have. Let me see if I can get rid of the telestration. Thank you very much. So the MDR, main development region, definitely warmed. It's now running slightly above the long-term average overall from, basically this box right here, roughly. Actually, it's a little bit more east than that. But, I mean, clearly things have warmed up. We have a little bit cooler INSO 3.4 region, and the 1-2 area down here is cool. And what does all that mean? Well, basically, not a very negative setup in the Pacific in terms of the classic El Nino structure. Now, this area all through here definitely running above the long-term average, and quite a bit in some areas, and that's going to mean Hawaii will continue to possibly be threatened, and I'll show you my thoughts on that in just a minute as well. Now look at the Reynolds version. So this is a weekly analysis from the Reynolds method. Again, there's different methodologies behind how these are derived. Unfortunately, there's no one universally accepted method. There's different data sets that make up the background. All in all, though, everything seems to be generally accurate and on par, so I trust what I show you. If I didn't trust it, I wouldn't show it. But this is a weekly average, and the week that we're talking about here valid on the 25th of August. And you notice here too, the main development region warmed up. And look, right in here, let's use blue for a moment. We're talking a degree Celsius. That's a heck of a change from a degree below to a degree above. A lot of energy there. But here's what I really want to point out. Notice how this area overall, just a little area, here and there of slightly negative anomalies. But everything else is positive. And this is that AMO ring, the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. This part of the tropical Atlantic and up through the subtropics is no longer colder than the long-term average. And if we look at this is what it looked like back, on June the 4th. This was all very cool relative to average, and we have certainly changed that as we look now, okay, from this one here off the coast of the British Isles, Ireland, past the Iberian Peninsula here, Spain and Portugal, definitely warmed up. And why is that important? Because the Well, first, because there was so much made about how cold it was relative to average. And now it's only August 28th. It's not doing this late in September where it's probably too late. Think about like in a basketball game and Team A is down 18 points, with 4 or 5 minutes to go. They have some great players. They may think that there's a chance they could come back, and they hit a couple of threes, but man, the time's running out, and they're just not going to catch up. That would be, in my opinion, the analogy if all of this happened like a month from now or mid-September, that it played catch-up. It didn't. It did so at the end of August, right before the ramping up of the season traditionally begins. And that is kind of like a team that's down 18 points with 12 minutes to go, and they really start making a comeback. And you've seen that before. Now, sports and hurricanes have nothing to do with each other, but I try to use these analogies to help you understand the importance of what I'm looking at. It doesn't mean that I'm forecasting anything or that I'm right about anything or that I'm wrong. These are just my observations that this has happened not very late in the season, but right at the time that things normally start to uptick. All right, so let's clear some of these tabs. I'm going to need them later. So the Atlantic Basin, quiet for now. We'll get back to this in a moment. The Eastern Pacific, still very busy. Here's Miriam. No worries for Hawaii, which is way over here on the left side. From Miriam, anyway, it's going to turn harmlessly to the north. But if we go back, the next one would be, I think, Norman. And Norman we're going to have to watch, and I'll show you why over the coming days. It looks like it's going to move generally in this direction once it does develop. And then after Norman, this is probably going to develop, and the parade will continue in the Eastern Pacific, maybe threatening to use up all of the letters of the alphabet, believe it or not. And while there are no impacts seen for the Baja or mainland Mexico over here just yet, I want to caution you, just kind of reminding folks there, that once we get to September and we get these developments out here, they can turn back up towards the Baja or Mexico, the mainland part here, Pacific Mexico, as we drop these upper level troughs more and more off of the west coast. And that erodes the mid to upper level ridging. It moves this way some, and you get these things trying to recurve into the southwest part of North America. So nothing yet, but it's possible that we see that in September. So again, the Atlantic Basin nice and quiet even over the next 5 days. One area to watch down the road, but that's about it. Okay, let me get into that a little bit more as we go through the rest of these. All right, so let's take a look at first the Pacific, just a real quick, Norm to be, Miriam, whatever the O storm, I can't remember off the top of my head. Very busy Pacific. In the Atlantic, so this is the area that has been highlighted for possible development over the next 5 days as the background state becomes more and more favorable. Less sinking air out here, like that, and more rising air, a rising motion of the atmosphere that allows tropical convection to blossom and flourish over those warmer waters, right? So this is where it all starts to matter. Looking at the vorticity signature, I am on the hunt, if you will, for, I'm back to red, want to make sure I got the right colors, like this. This is Miriam. Nice and round in its appearance, concentrating the energy around a common warm core center. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Do we see anything like that? Not yet. This is starting to get that look a little bit. A lot of energy trying to bundle. We also need to watch this very closely because it may end up in this area over the next few days. Remember, a few days ago, and I even saw the Weather Channel talking about this on their Outlook, their tropical update. I think they still do that at 10 before the hour, that a possible storm threat or something like that for Labor Day weekend off the coast of Florida. And this is the reason for that. And it's, a possibility. All right, so let me get into this because this is going to be, I think, somewhat, I don't want to say shocking, but this is going to be a stark contrast at the end of these slides here, these frames, from the beginning. Okay, so this is the Euro, the ECMWF model from last night's run, the 0Z run. This is the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere, and this is the vorticity. This is where I look to see if we get anything out across the tropics, anywhere out here, that becomes rounded and concentrated in its appearance. That's what I use this for. So this is the initial map, and this is 24 hours out. Nothing really. We have a pretty good elongated area of energy out here. This is going to try to bundle up and do something, no doubt about it. That's 24. This is 48. Still nothing really. 72. Now we start to concentrate this energy right here. And I'm going to change my color scheme back to blue just to make it pop better. So we're watching this. This starts to try to develop. And if we go to 96 hours, 4 days out, you clearly see that that starts to develop even more. You know, you see it, the rounded color, the Euro, the rounded shape to it, the color scheme. It's all coming together in the deep tropics. But also, watch this right here. This is the energy that was sitting over here now, and it has moved its way off to the west-northwest into the central Bahamas, where we probably will see, this is going to be valid on Friday night into Saturday, probably going to see a pretty solid flare-up of convection in this area towards the weekend. And that's what the Weather Channel was talking about. So you got to give them props. That was a few days ago. I was sitting in Hawaii when I saw that. And here it is coming to fruition possibly. This is only 4 days away. And it's the Euro, which most regard as the best global model in the world. It's not perfect, but generally speaking, it does a really, really good job. And we'll see. So that's 4 days out. At day 5, even more. Concentration of showers and thunderstorms in the Bahamas. This starts to take off just west of the formerly known Cape Verde Islands. Now it's the Cabo Verde Islands. At day 6, the system in the northwest Bahamas starts to energize even more. And now this is Monday, Labor Day, 2018. There's our system out in the tropical Atlantic. And then finally at day 7, a system trying to develop over South Florida, so watch out for that. This goes on to develop another pocket of energy coming off, so that's 1, 2, that's a horrible 2, 3 systems by early next week, and then finally at day 8, and then day 9, and day 10. Now, I normally don't show, day 10 maps because they're so subject to errors, but what we're looking at is that evolution here. 24 hours, just look at how these go on. Wonderful maps from Levi Cowan, Tropical Tidbits, that we can show you this. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Really? We went from nothing, and man, it's not going to be a hurricane season, to the first week of September, possibly having 5 systems, even if it's just 3, even if it's just 2 that actually develop. That's a lot more than we have been seeing. So I'm concerned that possibly, if we go back and we look at the vorticity, this one right here, this energy here ending up over here, that has my attention more than anything because of how warm this water is, the population centers that are in there. Anything that forms this far out usually turns out to sea. I mean, obviously, because if they didn't, nobody would live over here and down here. They'd be like, yeah, we just can't live along the coast if every tropical cyclone that developed came west and hit land every time. That would be a bad thing, and it doesn't happen that way, fortunately. So I am most concerned about this for obvious reasons. And then looking along the lines of what other people are saying, I always find this very important. I look to what other people are saying, you look to what I'm saying, and I certainly encourage you to look at what other people are saying like I do, okay? Expand your horizons. Just make sure that whoever you're listening to at least seems to know what they're talking about, please, because as we know with the internet, that's all I'm going to say. I think you know. So look, Ben Knoll, very smart gentleman, and he's been talking about the uptick for several weeks now, and now we are within that time frame that he's been talking about. And here we go. And then this right here, this looks like the beginning of an active period that may last into October. So 36 days or more of activity starting to fire up. That's a long time. A lot can happen, and you need to be on your guard. You need to not look at this as a non-season. It's kind of like walking away from that basketball game. College, NBA, doesn't matter, a football game. I mean, hey, and this will create a lot of comments, I'm sure. Remember a certain Super Bowl when a certain somebody was up 28 to, 3? And I even sent a text to a colleague of mine, there's no way the Patriots are coming back. And we all know how that turned out. And even though, again, football does not have anything to do with hurricanes, the analogy stands, and I stand by that analogy. So please remember, this is the peak time. I've showed you the evidence all along. We were heading towards a warmer pattern in the Atlantic. The models are indicating wait until September, and now we're seeing more and more signs that it'll come to fruition. I realize it's not happening yet, and until it does, there's nothing to be concerned about, but I want you to be just a level up from, sleeping, so to speak. One level up from there. I want your awareness just at level 1 right now, and where it goes from there, we will discover together. Alrighty? Before I go, just want to point out once again, I'm on Twitter. Follow me there. I'll be posting frequently. And you folks that were signing up for Patreon recently and back in the early part of the summer and even the past couple of years, this has made a huge difference. It helped me with the equipment that I took to Hawaii, and this is the future of crowdfunding creators like myself. And I encourage you, whatever, and of course you encourage us. Yeah, it's my job. This is what I do. And working for you, I think, is better than working for corporate sponsors. I'm not against it. I just feel more in touch that, humans, real people, are signing up, supporting what I do, and I have that interaction with them. It's great, absolutely, to get a paycheck or whatever from a corporate sponsor, and I did that in the early part of my career, and I'm not knocking it, but it is more fulfilling to know that there are people with first and last names on the other side instead of a corporate name that I can interact with. And so if you're interested in supporting what I do on Patreon, it's growing. I appreciate it, and it absolutely made a difference with what I did in Hawaii. And whatever happens, which, of course, the effects were not that much, but everything I did out there worked, and the Patreon supporters, you saw the benefits of it. And, you got that access. So I'm going to be hammering this more and more because I think it's going to really help me in the future. And that means it'll help you because I will still do these videos and the educational side absolutely, unmonetized, if you will. I'm not going to just put everything behind a paywall, but what I do put behind a paywall, so to speak, is supported by some fantastic folks, and it really does make a difference, and I wanted you to know that. So thank you. All right, that is it from me for this morning. I was in earlier than usual, and probably be doing this early every day from now on because things are going to get very busy, I do believe. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. Thanks for the support. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll have more for you tomorrow.